Hello, welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to be setting up a Direwolf server which can be used then remotely via the LAN network connection instead of running it on the machine, which you might be running a terminal for a packet radio. I just want it left in my local area network connected to a radio so that I can connect with various different machines and terminal programs and access it. You can only have one at a time though. So the Direwolf server I've set up is running on Debian, Debian 13 in fact, and I wanted it running all the time on something that I leave on, so I made it a virtual machine on my Proxmox server, which runs 24/7. So it just sits there. Of course, you could install this on a dedicated machine like a Raspberry Pi or a small computer running Ubuntu or Debian or whatever, but I wanted to put it on the server so that I can just start it and forget about it. And we'll see later I make it auto start anyway, so it just runs. So I've got a DigiRig plugged in, and we've got a DigiRig. Here's a DigiRig. I'm not looking at the output of my camera, but it's here. Probably you can see that. That's the DigiRig, which is plugged in to the server, a USB port, which we're going to have to forward to the virtual machine through the Proxmox interface. And the other side of that is connected to a radio. It's an FT818 radio, which has got a dummy load on it, so I can mess around transmitting signals that don't get radiated. And it's on 2 meters, 144.8 megahertz. And so what I did was I installed on my Proxmox server a Debian virtual machine, Debian 13 latest version, using the net install ISO. It's smaller and it downloads what it needs as it goes. And I selected no desktop, so you only get a command line interface, something like this over here. And that's all we need just to run this little server. It needs only 1 gigabyte of RAM, 1 CPU core allocated to it. And you'll see on the virtual machine I'm using, it's got 20 gigabytes, but I've decided I only really need 4, because when I checked, the installed size is 1.8 gigabytes, so with a 4 gigabyte storage should be enough, even if the log files grow. So that's already installed on the server. If you use Debian desktop without a desktop, then you get the sound tools, which you wouldn't have in a Linux container. And instead of having to work out how to install those, I just cheated and used the proper full virtual machine. It actually got the name 100. And if we look at my Proxmox control panel, you see here virtual machine number 100. I've called it Direwolf, and the the shell console for that machine is a bit too small and you can't read that. So what I've done is I've looked at the IP address by typing IP and then A, and the IP address actually ends in 144. So what I've done is I put that up here, and we're going to SSH into it, and that's hopefully easier to read. The first time you SSH into a little server like this, it'll probably ask you if you really want to connect, because it doesn't know the public key that's being used. So you have to type yes, press enter, and then it's added to the key ring on the client machine, which is what I'm recording this video on. And so that is that little Debian server, and you can see it's got the IP address 144, otherwise it wouldn't have been able to connect to it. So that's that. And the other thing we're going to have to do is at some point access the shell of the Proxmox server itself. So you just click on the name of the server and then shell, and you get this command line interface. That's the Proxmox server itself. Again, to make it a bit bigger, I've SSH'd into it using the same commands as here, but with the IP address of the server. So this is actually the same command line interface as this one. And this is easier to look at, easier to read, I hope. So let me look at my notes. What am I trying to tell you? We know the IP address. So I've connected using SSH. And oh yeah, first thing to do, of course, is to update it. Probably doesn't need it, but let's do it anyway. Sudo apt update. Let it do that. And yeah, doesn't need an update. Okay. And then there are the packages that you need for this Direwolf server. Most important one is called Direwolf, which is on the next line. That's clever, isn't it? So that's there. And also utils and these libraries to deal with sound, because you'll see we're going to have to mess around with sound interfaces a little bit, and some other utilities. So let me Control-C, copy that and put it in here. Hopefully it will install all of them. Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. It's easy to make this kind of mistake. That is the shell for my Proxmox server, where I do not want to install these things. It's so easy to get these mixed up. This is why I've got two windows open. Normally I just use tabs in a terminal program like this, but tabs are even worse because I often forget which tab I'm looking at, put the wrong commands on the wrong machine. So that's the first thing to learn. So this is the little Debian server, which is where I did the update. I wonder how I managed to click in there. So I need to install these packages in here. Control-Shift-V. Okay, that's where I want Direwolf installed. That's an interesting mistake to make. That's not the first time I've done that. Let's just clear the screen here. I don't want to look at that. It's embarrassing. So it's installing these packages. And what I will do when it's installed is have a quick look at the disk size usage, because I think a 4 GB drive would have been big enough for this. And yeah, then I'm going to shut it down and plug in the DigiRig to the server. So it's almost finished. Okay, let's just see how much space that occupies. And you can see, yeah, it's a 19 GB drive. Used 1.5 gigabytes, so a 4 GB drive I'm sure would be big enough when you create a virtual machine. So I've done that. What do I want to do now? Shut down. So actually I'm lazy to type, so let's just copy that in there. You have to use sudo when you're running Debian, and you can see it's disconnected. Broken pipe. So now I'm back to my client machine that I'm sitting at and using as a terminal. So that's done. Plug in the DigiRig. So I've done that. And yes, now we have to pass that, the USB interface for the DigiRig, we have to pass it through to the Debian virtual machine. So if we look at the Proxmox shell, which is this one, and type ls-usb, we'll see the various things on the USB buses on my Proxmox server. You notice I've got various, like this, SDR play, SDR devices, several of them. But the ones we're interested in for this are these two. The what do we got? Audio device, and what's important is these numbers here. This is the manufacturer and the device ID. That's important, and the other one that's important is this one, which is the UART interface in the DigiRig CP2102. It is in fact, and that's its details. So we need to use those, and I'm going to pass them through manually to the virtual machine to make sure it really works. You'll see in another video how important that can be when I tried to actually pass through this SDR device from SDR Play. This was the only way to do it, so I've learned how to do this. So those are the two, and I've made a note of those here. I've just copy pasted that into here because these addresses are important. Where this is VM100, yes. So we just have to use these commands to the Proxmox host. QM means it's a virtual machine, and we're going to set virtual machine number 100 to have this binding for the hardware with the device ID and so on bound to that virtual machine. So I'm going to do Control-C, copy it, Control-V into here. So that's been set. It even says it set it. And the same for the other one, because remember there are two USB devices in a DigiRig. Control-C, Control-Shift-V. Yep, that's been set. And this will read out the config file for that virtual machine. Just want to check it's really in there. And if you do this while the virtual machine's running, these things are not implemented until after you actually not just reboot, but I've discovered you have to stop and start the virtual machine for it to then to take these new things on board. And here you can see the two USB devices with the hardware addresses we got from the ls-usb command. So it looks like that's working. So now I can start the virtual machine, which hopefully isn't already running. So it's 100, start. Oh, interesting. Why? Wrong way around. Syntax, QM, start. What do you want to start? 100. Okay, so that'll start the virtual machine VM100. It's now started. Take a few seconds to boot up. I suppose I could even have a look at it doing the booting. VM100, where is it? Here. this is, oh, it's already done it. There it is. So it's started and it's running. Yeah, interesting. Last time I looked at it was up here. Now it's down here. So I'm doing it down here. So that's VM100. This is, yeah, the Proxmox control panel. You see how easy it is for me to get confused, or anyone. That's where I control the virtual machines, and this is the virtual machine. So now I want to connect to it, no doubt, and have a look at what happened. So we're not going to use this again, so I'm going to log out of this in case I make any more mistakes. Exit. That's closed it, and now we're back at the client machine where I'm sitting. Control L, clear the screen. So I've started that VM100, and we're going to SSH into it on the other window so I don't get confused. It's 144, yes. Password. So that is my virtual machine where I've just installed the packages that I need for Direwolf, hopefully. Yeah, you can see I did it. So this is the right machine. It's always worth checking these things. Now we have to look at, actually, let's just see if the DigiRig got passed through. That's USB. And what USB devices does it have? Yep, magically it has this and this, which is what we passed through from the host, the Proxmox host. So it's now visible on this virtual machine. And of course you can't run multiple virtual machines all using the same USB devices. That wouldn't work. So I've only got this one running. So that worked. So now I'm going to look at these devices and see if we have some sound devices. Let me just check, talking of that my OBS is still running and recording. Yes, it is. I don't trust myself. So let's copy this, Control C, put it into there. And this is, remember, this is headless Debian with no desktop, and it's got some audio devices. And this is, one is for capture and one is for playback. That's for receive and transmit on the DigiRig. So that's worked. And it's also got its UART, so that's for the controlling push-to-talk on the radio. So that worked. So I pasted that in there because we might need it later. Okay. What I need to do is I need to lock these names because there's going to be a config file later on for Direwolf to read in when it starts up, and it needs to know what devices it connects to. And we have to lock the naming, and you can see on here that the audio device is given the name device. It's not very inventive, is it? But it's called device, and we need to know that for later. So yeah, here I've got it here as well. 0 device. That's the name that the sound device is known as, and it's a bidirectional device, this one. So we need to remember that for later. The other thing to do is to pin the DigiRig serial interface, that CP2102 chip, needs to be given a name as well rather than the hardware address. And you remember the hardware address I had somewhere is in hex, and it's here somewhere. Here it is. It's 10C4 EA60. So I need to use that to link it to a nicer, prettier name. And where have I done that? That was the audio. You can see how complicated this gets. In here, what I'm going to do is set up a udev rule on this Debian virtual machine, and it's going to give, or symlink, the name TTY DigiRig to that device. This, where was it? 10C4 EA60. That's the vendor and the product. So this links the hardware name to a pretty name, and that's quite useful. So what I'm going to do is this actually writes it into the file with this name .rules, using T to write it straight in rather than having to edit it with a nano editor or something. So Control C copies that, and I make sure I paste it into the right place this time, which is there. Quite often I extend the password timeout because it gets annoying having to keep repeating passwords. I haven't done it on this machine yet. So that's made that udev rule. What we have to do then is reload the rules. Maybe I'll do this all in one chunk. And like that. Control Shift V. So, reloaded the rules. Okay. The other thing we have to do is, because in here you'll see that this udev rule puts the device into the group called dial-out, which is standard for USB serial devices. So we have to make sure that our user is also in that group, and probably he isn't. Or I should say they aren't, shouldn't I? Groups. You see that the user, whose name is user, is not in the dial-out group yet, so we have to add it. If your username is not user, you type in here what it is. I always call my users user, then I don't forget their names. So put that in there. So now it's been added, but it won't actually get added until you log out and log in again, or reboot just as quick. So I'm going to do a reboot, and with Debian you have to do sudo reboot. Hopefully the password is still valid. Yes, it's done it. It's disconnected. Okay, so we'll wait for that to reboot. And then we'll connect again to the virtual machine and create the config file, because Direwolf will read in this config file when it starts up, and we need to put some information in there. So let's actually, that's probably ready by now. Oh, no. Oh yes, it is. Okay. So I'm reconnecting, and I'm in that Debian server, and we need to create the config file and put in some information. So let's do that using sudo this time. Control C and then Control Shift V. So that's the config file, which is empty. And what I'm going to do is copy paste in the information for my radio station. So we do that. Control Shift V. And if we look at it, there's the word device, which is the name for the analog audio interface in the DigiRig. So it was called device, so there we put device. And my call sign, amateur radio call sign, is that, which I put in. The packet radio, I'm going to use 1200 boards, which is standard, so you set the modem speed to 1200. And the DigiRig has to be able to switch the transmitter on and off, key the transmitter using the push-to-talk line through a cable which you plug in. And we're going to use RTS, what's that? Ready to send protocol. And the PTT device is called that, and you see, remember, that's the pretty name that was in the udev rule in there, and that will allow the Direwolf software to transmit or turn on the transmitter to key the PTT. And the other thing is, actually these, if you don't specify these are the defaults anyway that get used, but I've put them in there so I remember what they are. And the KISS TCP port is 8001 and the AGW port is 8000. And in another video I'll be using the AGW port for another terminal program. So that's it. Let's do Control X to exit. We want to save it. Yes. So that's done. And hopefully that will work. Interesting. So assuming it works, first thing to do is to run Direwolf, and I'm going to put on this audio debug command with a 5-second interval, so it displays the received audio levels because it's connected to a radio with the squelch open, I hope. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. That's the sound of the radio with the squelch open. There are no signals, but there's noise, so we can look at the level of that noise. So let's do Control C on there and put it into here. Oh, it looks like it's working. Do I look surprised? What have we got here? Interesting. It doesn't like the PTT setup. We'll have to look at that later. Why is that? Missing RTS or DT after PTT device name. It says it wants it here. That's interesting. It worked before. Anyway, what we're looking at is audio. So we've got a level of 200 coming in, which is the maximum that this can display. It goes from 0 to 200, and 200 is too high. Should be aiming for about 60 maybe. So it's not the best, but at least it's able to see the audio coming in, and I still look surprised. What I need to do is to run ulcer mixer to be able to adjust that audio level. And the easiest way to do it is to open up another window, another SSH into that device, which is, what was it, 144. And the user is user, not root. So I'm reusing commands. So hopefully that'll work. Let's just type history to make sure that I'm actually looking at the right machine. Yes, I am. Good. So let's run also Mixer, and in real time adjust the levels so that we get the level we want. And I think mic is the microphone input from the DigiRig. So if I reduce that using the up-down arrows on the keyboard here, hopefully that level will reduce, which it hasn't done yet. Let's just have a look. F3 and F4 is recording devices. It's the wrong one. Mic is something else that Debian has found. If I press F4 for capture devices, we see there's a capture device. That is the DigiRig. So if I turn that down from 41%, hopefully these numbers will get smaller. It's interesting, isn't it? Oh, is that smaller? Let's go down some more. Oh yes, now it's decreasing. It's a bit slow because there's a 5-second update speed. Let's go down to 10. I'm impatient. 86. Yeah, that's okay. Certainly less than 200. It's halfway up the scale. So let's say that that's okay. So now the capture level has been set for the audio from the radio into the DigiRig, and all you do is press Escape from also Mixer, and then fix that, save it by doing this. So now that level has been saved, and it won't change. So after a reboot, the audio level will still be set the same. Next thing to do is to set the transmit audio level, because that was receive. So how do we do that? We run Direwolf again. I'll stop it and start it again, and this time this generates a test tone in the transmitter. So Control C, let's go over here, Control C to stop that, and then Control Shift V, and hopefully that is sending a test tone, which I expected I would hear on this little handheld radio. Oh, it hasn't keyed the transmitter because of the PTT error, so I need to find out why it's not working and then fix it, and then we can do the transmit audio test. As you can see, things don't always work first time, and I'll show you why. This is 2 terminal windows logged into that Debian virtual machine, and I hadn't noticed the version number of Direwolf. And when you start it, it's version 1.7, and the config file I pasted in here, this is the direwolf.conf file on that little server, was for a different version. And when you use apt install Direwolf, you get version 1.7 at the moment from the repository. The actual current version is 1.8, which you have to compile from source, which I was too lazy to do, but I might try that in another install of this. So that's the problem. And the syntax for the config file varies depending on the version number, unfortunately. So there I had RTS on a separate line. The correct command is this one, and this should now work. While I'm at it, there was an error down here as well. This was not KISSport, it was something else, and I've changed it. And I've also added a few more parameters, which are useful because you can set up for when transmitting and so on, start delay for the transmitter and the tail, waiting time, and various other things like retries and persistence of the packet radio system. So I put those in there as well in case I want to experiment with them later. So using this config file, you can see that Direwolf starts up without any errors. So now I should be able to do the transmit audio level test. We already did the receive one. So let's just click in here first and do Control C. Maybe let's exit this so I don't have to look at it. Control L. Okay. So let's run the transmit audio test now, which is the one ending with an M. That one. Oh, now it works. You can hear now the signal is being transmitted with a test tone. It has a regular ticking sound, about 10 times a second. I'm not sure what that is yet. Something to do with timing. Let me just stop that. Something to do with timing in the server, that when you try and generate a continuous tone, it has these little interrupts in it. Although the transmitted data seems to be okay when it's sending real FSK data at 1200 baud, that ticking sound is not there. So there's something a little bit odd there, but I'm not going to investigate that now. So what we were playing with was setting up audio levels. So running Ulcer Mixer again. Last time I looked at the capture level, which was set to 9 to give a reasonable reading in the audio received levels in Direwolf. So that stayed the same. I have rebooted the server. You can see it did remember the setting. So I tested that. What we're doing now is for the transmit audio, let's play back, because the server is playing audio probably through this thing called speaker. So I should adjust the level of this to get a clean transmit audio tone. And you may not be able to hear it, and maybe there's distortion anyway in this YouTube recording, but if the level's too high, there's some distortion, and as you bring it down, it'll get clean and then it'll get quiet. So let's just check that that actually happens. So send a tone. And you can see that that is the right control, the correct one. So let's go up and down with the cursor keys. Actually, it doesn't, you don't really hear it distort, but what I'm going to do is get to the point just below where it's hit the maximum audibly. That's a little distorted actually. That's the maximum. So that's a bit quiet. Let's leave it around about there. It's important to have a clean transmit tone so as not to cause interference on adjacent channels. And also at one point I was testing and I had this tone a little bit too quiet, and even though it sounded okay, the receiving station wasn't receiving my data, and I just had to up the level a tiny bit, and then it all suddenly worked last night. So it was a discovery. So anyway, we've set that. We need to store it, so it's to escape. So exit from there and then store those values. Sudo ulcer ctl store. Okay, so after a reboot, that value will have been stored for transmit audio. So that's good. Normally, when you want to run Direwolf, we just use this command without any of those extra parameters. So it just looks like that. So now you can see it's running and it's not giving any errors, and it's ready to accept connections. So what I'm going to do is try and connect to it from my client machine here, and using this net connect to that. Ooh, that's not the right IP address, isn't it? Isn't it 144? You have to spot these things. What I'm going to do is exit this quickly and just check the IP address. Yeah, it's 144. Okay, interesting. And actually with Direwolf not running, I'll show you what happens if you issue this command. This is now from my terminal because I've disconnected from the server. Have I? No, I haven't. Let's disconnect. Exit. So now it's disconnected from the server. This is my terminal client here. Control-Shift-V. And what happens is you get the prompt straight back because it didn't connect. And that's what we'd expect to happen. What I'm going to do now is start Direwolf in the server like that. So that's now listening for connections, and run this command again from the terminal. Bing. And you can see that this message has popped up, attached to KISS TCP client, which is this TCP client through the network. It's been attached, and it's still attached. And it says it's ready to accept more. I'm just wondering if I should one day try making several parallel connections to the one server. Anyway, and from the terminal end, we know that it's working because the user prompt has not come back. And that means it's connected and it's waiting for data to be sent. So that means the connection works. That's a way of testing a connection. It doesn't look very convincing, but that means it works. So that worked. Let's just hit Control-C here. And we've got this working. Receive and transmit. Audio level set. And client has gone away because I just exited. So that all looks good. The thing is, you have to, if you run it like this, you have to manually start Direwolf, as I did just here, using this SSH terminal. The problem is if you close the terminal, which you might do when you shut down this client machine, then the Direwolf program will also stop running because it's dependent on being run from this terminal, and if it goes away it'll stop, which is not very convenient. And because it's running on a server and I want it running all the time, what we have to do is to make it start up automatically on boot. And we do this using systemd, or I did, and it worked. First of all, you need to know where the program is stored. So let's exit from that, Control-L for a clean screen. And I need to know where the Direwolf program is resident. So let's put that in there. And it's in user bin Direwolf. Okay. So what we need to do is to create a service that will make that run on startup. So Control C, we're going to edit a systemd file that doesn't exist yet. Hopefully, no, good, because it's a clean installed Debian server. So this is the systemd file, and all I'm going to do is, remembering this location here, which would be appearing here, there it is, exec start. So that's the path to the Direwolf program, and it's going to load its config file, which is now correct. These are all pretty standard parameters we use always in systemd. Username, you have to put the name of your user here, and mine is user, as I said earlier. If yours is different, then put your username here from this server so that it works. So all I'm going to do is copy paste all of this into that file, Control C and then Control Shift V. So that's gone in there, looks okay. Control X, yes. So that is the systemd. Now I need to save and exit it, I just did. And then you have to reload the systemd daemons to load it into the system and then enable it so that on a reboot it will actually happen, and you can start it as well. Let me start it first, see if it actually works. Yeah, no errors, so that's started. So let's do these all in one block. So it'll work after a reboot. Control C, Control Shift V, chunk, created a symlink. Okay, so after a reboot, it will automatically start this this daemon. Interesting. Let's just check the status of it. Why not? Because I can. And you can see it's enabled, preset enabled, and it's active, it's running, and it will be also after a reboot. So Control C from, oh, let's have a look at this. This is the messages from Direwolf. So it said it started up and it's ready to accept connections, which is great. So let's exit from there. And what I'm going to do now is reboot this machine to test whether, oh yeah, Direwolf will actually start as it should do. Let's see the machine rebooting this time. Maybe there it is. That's the what it's presenting on the Proxmox server, and at some point now it's waiting for me to log in. The SSH server takes a few seconds before it starts up, so it may not be ready yet, and then login won't work, but let's try it anyway. So let's do that. Okay, it did. So I'm connected to that server, and Direwolf should be running, we hope, after the reboot automatically. And the way to do it is by looking at the journal CTL output from Direwolf, and then you'll see what it's doing in real time. So Control C, let's put that in there. So Direwolf 1.7 has started, ready to accept. So let's make a connection from, this is my user terminal here. That, oh, bing, you can see this popped up, ready to accept. Oh no, here, attached. So it shows that this is attached. So this is nice to display a real-time output from what Direwolf is doing. Normally I wouldn't do this except when I'm testing it. So let's exit that, Control C, and then this pops up. This client has gone away. So Direwolf did start automatically on boot, and I can connect to it, and I can see that I'm connected to it. So that works. I think that is everything. So you can see it's fairly easy, once you've ironed out the bugs, to install a Direwolf server that can be accessed via the network from any device for packet radio signals, transmission and reception. And by putting it on a server with a systemd command, it can run automatically on startup. And if it's a virtual machine on a Proxmox or other host, then you can have lots of virtual machines running, and this is just one of them, and it just sits there on my network. So when it's needed, it's there. So I think that's enough. I look forward to reading your comments and questions. I'm still learning how to do this, and packet radio is being revived with me after a 30-year break, maybe longer, since the late 1980s. So let's see what happens next. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, and if you want to see what comes next, then also subscribe.